Welcome, my friends, to another edition of the Heritage Wealth Planning YouTube channel. Today, we're going to follow up on our conversation about Social Security and what you need to know to maximize your own benefit. Actually, we're going to go to a kind of a wrap up with a fictitious client that we've been talking about quite a bit, Bob and Jane. But before we dive into that, just to remind you, if you're just jumping into the series right now, no. Go back. You got to understand the premise of Social Security, because don't forget, this is your benefit and no one's going to care more about your benefit than you. You got to understand what average index monthly earnings are, AIME, what FRA is, full retirement age, what PIA is, primary insurance amount, what delayed earnings credits are. You got to understand taking benefits early, late, spousal benefits, survivor benefits, divorcee benefits. All this stuff is important, and just again, I'm clicking right there, or I'm linking right there. Click on that so you can understand that. But let's say you've now done that. You pause and you this video, you went and watched all those videos, and here you are back for more. Well, congratulations, I suppose. I think this will be a good scenario for you to follow here, because we're going to use, again, our case study of Jane and Bob. Pretty simplistic in this case. We're just going to say Jane and Bob are born on the exact same day. They just turned 62 and they want to know if they can retire. They come to my office and they say, Josh, lay it to us. Lay it to us straight. Can we retire? So the first thing we do, we need three things. If we can get these three things, we can have a good gauge of where they stand from a retirement planning perspective. Three things. Their PIA, primary insurance amount. With that, we can get a lot of different number crunching. If we know their PIA, we can run a lot of numbers. Their income needs. Now, this is not just some silly metrics like, oh, I need 80% of my pre-retirement income. Forget that. How much do you need going forward? Now, you're not going to know because you've never retired before. But get it out of the head of that. We're going to look at 80% what we had before. How much do we need going forward? Think about it. What's your cable bill? What's your mortgage? Well, in this case, I'm hoping that Bob and Jane, because they've been reading my books where I talk about debt is the enemy, that they got rid of their mortgage. Because I'm just telling you, folks, if you go into retirement carrying a mortgage, it's a tough road to hoe. I'm just telling you right now, don't do that. Ideally, you go to retirement with no debt. There are studies out there that show you people, even with limited income, are just simply happier, content if they have no debt. It only makes sense. If you have a debt, you have this chain. You're tied to that debt. And if you're tied to the debt and the markets are fluctuating and you need the markets to go up in order to make the payments on that debt, you're going to be world of hurt. In fact, today, the markets are down 550 points, the Dow is. I mean, what does that mean? I have no clue. But if you have your contingency on paying the mortgages for the markets to go up, and you see a day like today at 550, it's not good. So don't let that be you. All right, so looks like it just paused there for a second. Okay, good. Looks like we're back. All right, so what we want to do is we want to find out what their PI is, what their income needs are, and what their portfolio size is, okay? Pause real quick. So if you need the market to provide your income in order to pay your mortgage, in a day like this happens where they're down 550 points or 1,000 points or 200 points, you're going to be a whole lot more concerned than someone who doesn't have a mortgage to begin with. So don't let that be you. The third thing here we need to know is their portfolio amount. If we can know these three things, portfolio, PIA, and income need, we will know a strong way to analyze if they're ready for retirement or not. Okay, so let's talk about these guys here. And we know Jane and Bob. Jane worked a little bit as a part-time at a nonprofit when the kids were out of school and they were empty nesters. She worked at the church, stuffing envelopes and doing the weekly bulletin and whatnot. Not making a lot of money, but her AIME is $2,000, which meant her PIA, her primary insurance amount, was $1,159. We know Bob worked as an electrician, and he averaged $72,000 a year over the course of his 35 years, his max 35 years of earnings experience with Social Security, which meant his AIME was $6,000, which means his PIA is $2,300. Okay, so we know that right there. That's fundamental number one. So we go down to 66 years old and we put it in here and we say, okay, at the end of the day, Jane and Bob, if you're 66, you'll have between y'all $3,495 a month in guaranteed income from Social Security because your PIA is the amount you get at your full retirement age. But then Bob pipes up and says, whoa, I don't want to work another 4 years. That's why we're here now at 62. What's our ability to retire at 62? And I say, okay, well, given that there are reductions if you retire, if you draw your Social Security before your full retirement age, between you'd have 2621 as an income stream from Social Security. And Bob said, okay, that's more like it. I like to hear that. Let's talk about that. I said, okay, good. So we can go for it. So how much do you guys need to live on? They say, we think $5,000 a month because I help them crunch the numbers. We're not using 80% of pre-retirement income. That's, again, don't do that. Get a more detailed analysis of your income needs in retirement. So I said, okay, guys, now we also got to make sure that includes taxes because a lot of times they will not include taxes in their income needs, and that can be a big surprise when it comes April 15th. So in this case, if they're pulling $60,000 a year, which is $5,000 a month, minus their two standard deductions, that's $24,000. That means they're going to have $36,000 of income, which just barely makes a tiny fraction of their Social Security taxable. So basically, they're going to pay $1,000 a year in income taxes, roughly. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but not much. So $1,000 a year off of $60,000 of income, this is pretty spot on. The reason I make a point to point this out is if you have other sources of income and you have more income, less standard deductions, all these other ifs, you got to focus on your taxes. If it's just commonplace boilerplate information like we have with Jane and Bob, not a big deal. But remember, you got to look at your income need net of taxes. Net of taxes. Uncle Sam always gets paid first. Don't believe me? Don't pay him. So, okay, so now Bob and Jane want to say, okay, we have an income need of $5,000. If we retire at 62, we got $26.21 a month coming from Social Security, which leaves us an income gap of $23.79. That income gap is a difference between how much we need and how much we have from Social Security. So what we do is we times $23.79 by 12, and that gives us an income gap, an annual income gap of $28,500. We take this amount, we divide by 0.04, which gives us a portfolio need of roughly $713,000. The reason why we divide by 0.04 is because that goes back to the 4% rule. As much as I do have some qualms with it, I think it's a good starting point. This is the one rule of thumb I think is acceptable for you all to use as you look at your own retirement, the 4% rule, because at the end of the day, all it says is we run scenarios, market goes up, market goes down. Will your money last for 30 years in retirement if you're invested 60% stocks and 40% bonds? Again, lots of variables in there, but it's a good rule. It's a good starting point to analyze. Are you going to be okay using the 4% rule for 30 years in retirement? So if we need $28,000 a year, we need a portfolio of $713,000 to give us that $28,000 a year. So we have the income need as scenario is one of the three scenarios. We have the PIA as the second scenario, or actually one of the two. And then we have portfolio. So I say, what's your portfolio balance? And they say X. Well, if it's not 700,000 or so, we probably don't want to retire quite yet, or at least draw Social Security. So then Bob says, well, what if we wait till we're 66 and we run the same numbers? At that point, again, because they're retiring at full retirement age, their portfolio, their income needs still $5,000. Their Social Security income is $34.95, which means they have an income gap of $1,500 a month, which is $18,000 a year. Again, $18,000 divided by 0.04 means they need a portfolio of $451. And Bob and Jane say, oh, that's better. We have $451. And I say, whoa, hold up. We're not done yet. Because if you guys retire and start taking income, You're not, and then wait until you're 66 to draw Social Security. There is no income in these 4 years, 63, 64, 65, and 66. The income's got to come from someplace. So we need $60,000 a year for these 4 intervening years, which means we need another $240,000 on top of the 451, which means we have a portfolio need of 691. You guys make sense? So you don't have any income coming in from 62 to 66. When 66 hits, because you delayed taking Social Security, you'll make a big dent in your income need, but you still need $451,000 even here, but you still need another $240 on top of it just to get through the next 4 years. Bob and Jane say, interesting. Now, running these numbers alone, if it's 62 versus 66, and the only difference was 713,000 needed here versus 691,000 needed here, but here I got to work another 4 years. Well, I'm going to take this 90 times out of 100. I mean, I get 4 more years to myself between my wife and I. All I need is a $20,000 for my portfolio. That's a slam. That's non-brainer to me. So immediately, as I'm the advisor, I say, yeah, I wouldn't sweat working at 66. It's either 62. But let's run to 70. What happens at 70? Well, at 70, their Social Security between them is 4612. 5,000 minus 4612 gives them $388 a monthly income gap, which is 4,656. However, before I go on, I can hear in the YouTube world people thinking, oh, this guy's Scanlon, you're crazy. You're missing the big point. The big point they're going to say is you're not adjusting this for inflation. $5,000 at 62 is not the same $5,000 at 70. And you are correct, but we're not adjusting Social Security for inflation either. So if inflation's at 2.5%, in theory, Social Security will rise to meet that increase in inflation, and I'm not inflating Social Security balances either. So it's a wash. If inflation's at 3, Social Security's at 3, it's the exact same thing as $5,000 in today's dollars and $4,612 in today's dollars. So for simplicity, just compare apples to apples. I'm not inflating this simply because it'd be a wash. It's inflated on the income need. It's inflated on the income that we receive as well. So we're not going to use inflation here. But with that said, it's something to be considerate of. Sometimes the real inflation is different than what Social Security will give you for a COLA, cost of living adjustment. So you just got to keep that in the back of your mind. But anyway, so at age 70, because they deferred taking Social Security and earned their maximum delayed earnings credits, they have $4,600 a month in Social Security, which means they only have an income gap of $388. $388 times 12, they have an annual income gap of $4,600. Divide that by 4%, which means they only need a portfolio of $116,000. Except for the fact they need $480,000 to get this $60,000 a year for these 8 years. So they need a total portfolio of basically $600,000. So as we sit here in my office at the age of 62, I say to Bob and Jane, okay, this is what we need. If you were to retire today and start drawing on Social Security, to be safe, we need $713,000 in your portfolio today. Or we can wait until you're, or 600,000. That's if we want to start drawing Social Security now. Or we can wait to draw Social Security until you're 70. In that case, we only need $600,000 in your portfolio. What do we have? Now, if they only have $450,000 in their portfolio, then we're going to have to talk about this right here, their income need. Now, they might say, well, we only have $450,000 in our portfolio, but Bob says, look, there's no way I'm going to last till I'm 90 years old. That kind of made me a little bit nervous because I hear that a lot. And people are just living longer for sure. But that's a good observation. Bob says, look, my dad died at 63. His dad died at 70. There's just no way I'm going to last. Maybe whatever. I don't know what it'd be. There's just no way I'm going to last till I'm 90. In that case, we would have an extenuating circumstance which would challenge this. But just from a pure financial planning perspective, these are how you crunch the numbers. You can retire and draw Social Security today, but you need $700,000 in your portfolio. Or you can retire and not draw Social Security today and wait till you're 70, but you need $600,000 in your portfolio. Are you anywhere near that? Now, This is just a simple 62, 66, 70 calculation, but it works. I've used this scenario a million times. What if Jane takes that 62 and Bob at 70? What if Bob takes that 62 and Jane at 70? What if we can run all kinds of scenarios here to get to this amount of money that they need in their portfolio to see what's the most advantageous? Frankly, it's really going to be between 62 and 70. And it really, for this, when they should take it, depends on Bob's health. That's what it comes down to. If Bob is looking like he's not going to last long, we want him to defer as long as he can so that way Jane can step into a higher benefit. That's my Survivor Social Security YouTube video I've done. Please look at that because that's pretty important. And what's Jane's health and all kinds of different scenarios we can run. But at the end of the day, this is the crux of the matter. 62 or 70? What is our income needs? What is our income needs? That is another one too. Now, I will say at the end of the day, just because you have an income need of $5,000 in the first few years of retirement, like we talked about, it might drop as you get older. Lots of studies on that the income needs that you need as you get older drops. Now, some people have an extenuating circumstance called a long-term care need. That would be something we have to take into consideration. But that doesn't happen to that many people. I'm not saying don't plan for it. But frankly, the long-term care need, when it happens, can be devastating. It just doesn't happen to that many people. So as much as I want you to be prepared, I don't want you to still work until you're 85 years old because you're worried about having a devastating long-term care need. It's just not worth it to continue to work on so you can save more and more money for something that probably won't happen. But with that said, prepare for the worst and hope for the best for sure. All right, so I hope this helps you. There's some numbers here to crunch. Not rocket science, this, folks. This isn't rocket science, but it's critically important to get it done right. There are no do-overs. You got to get it right the first time. So you sit down and you analyze this stuff. You get a good idea of your income need. That is the one thing that is subject to your interpretation. This is not, and these are not. The one thing that's subject to your interpretation is income need. And the closer we can get that and just focused, the better planning we can do for it. All right, thumbs up if you like what we're talking about. You have questions, comments, concerns, put them in down below. What's your strategy for Social Security? Put it in there. I'd love to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe and then, of course, hit the notification bell so you're notified of future content. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Heritage Wealth Planning YouTube channel. Thanks, guys.